I'm actually very curious to see what you picked here.
Oh, it's Texas.
Okay, Texas against who?
Oklahoma.
Oh, you're really going to make Big 12 people upset with that
Yeah,
prediction.
that's what it should be. They made the conference, and they're going to leave it.
Who's
That's
winning?
Texas.
Okay.
Dude, 49-0 last year. First of all, Texas is just better. Great offensive line. I think Quinn's going to be phenomenal. Return 10 players from the defense. Defense, underrated storyline, one of the most improved in the country last year. I mean, compared to what we've seen with Tom Herman. It's not great. I mean, they still had games where you give up, 34 to Oklahoma State, 34 or 27 to Kansas State. But it was an improved product. And in the Big 12, I think it's going to be good enough. I like Gabriel as a quarterback for Oklahoma too. And I really like what Libby does as a play caller. I think they're going to bounce back. I think Oklahoma could be a 9-3 program this year, but that's a lot of Big 12 schools. I mean, Kansas State realistically, yeah, I mean, they're all the same.
There's a world where they all go 9-3.
Yeah. Have fun with with the tiebreakers with that.
Yeah.
No, in the last year, I think the cream rises to the top, and I think Texas wins the Big 12. You might see Texas in the playoff. Just saying.
Okay, so we'll get to that later because I wanted to do that, but I couldn't. So I'll tease that with my 4 playoff teams. I couldn't put Texas there. I don't have the trust for them to go that far yet. I do have them winning the Big 12 though. I have them beating K-State. This K-State roster returns their entire starting offensive line. They returned their starting quarterback and Will Howard, who was pretty good last year. He did have a pass completion percentage under 60%. But I think it's like 14 touchdowns to 4 picks, I think, in about half of the year. They actually have to replace Deuce Vaughn, who's going to be really difficult to replace, but I like what they did in the offseason, adding Trishawn Ward, Florida State transfer. DJ Giddens is another capable tailback. So I think their rushing attack will be a little bit more diverse. We'll see how their receiver room plays. They add Keegan Johnson, a transfer from Iowa. And then defensively, they have to replace Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who was the last pick of the first round. Coming off the edge. So that'll be tough. But they do return some other key people on the defensive side, like Khalid Duke, Daniel Green at linebacker. And they also have to replace the starting corner who got drafted by the Colts and Julius Brents. But when you return your entire starting offensive line, it's really hard for me to pick against that when you also return your starting quarterback. Now, if you wanted to say, the Big 12 hasn't had a team go to back-to-back playoff or back-to-back conference title games since I guess it would have been pre-pandemic. And that would have been Oklahoma, I think. That's a totally fair argument. If you want to talk about how K-State's never won back-to-back Big 12 titles and they had a lot of really good teams in the late 90s, early 2000s, like totally fair argument. I just really like the continuity there. Chris Klieman has a great culture there. And again, when you return 5 starting offensive linemen, and I know that they believe a lot in the offensive linemen that they have behind them, it's really hard for me to pick against that. So I'm picking K-State to be in the Big 12 title game against Texas. But I do think the Longhorns beat them for the second time in the season when they beat them in Arlington.
The program that we're starting to hear a little bit of buzz about, dark horse, if you want to consider it, is Texas Tech.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of people take them, and I know you've talked about it. You almost took them to the Big 12 title game. I'm seeing 9-3 predictions for the Red Raiders. But
they're going to be good.
Do I trust that defense to slow down, Texas and Kansas, like a Kansas State rushing attack? Shutting down a Texas offense line that's also pretty much, being brought back. Texas Tech, good program. They can put up some points. But through the course of 12 games, do I think they're a top 2 team? Not at this point. I really like what McGuire's doing. I mean, they found a guy that wants to be there and is qualified to be there, unlike Wells from Utah State, unlike Tommy Tupperville, who left after a couple seasons. I mean, it's a good hire, but at this point, let's stick with the Blue Bloods. Kansas State's kind of a Big 12 blue blood.
Kind of. They actually have more Big 12 titles, I think, than Texas.
They probably do.
Which is hilarious to say.
Last time Texas won anything was 2009.
Yeah, it was. You talked about Texas Tech being a little bit of a dark horse. I kind of want to pivot to another team in this conference who I think people are maybe circling as like an important year, Baylor. I'm interested to see like what the direction of that program truly is under Dave Aranda. They won the Big 12 in 2021 in his second year, but his first year was a COVID year and they weren't good. But I'm not going to hold that against him too much because it was a COVID year in 2020. But then last year, I think that they were picked to be in the Big 12 title game before the season. They fall short. I forget exactly what their record was at the end of the season.
6-7.
6-7. So they lost their bowl game. They had a lot of one-score games not go their way. They've got to kind of take a positive step, I think, this year. So I'm intrigued to see Baylor in the Big 12 this year too. I'm not picking them to go to the title game, of course, but I'm intrigued to see like what the direction of that program actually is.
Was it a sugar rush with Matt Rhule's program and Dave Reed?
Yeah, exactly.
I think Dave is a good football coach. He was one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. Even if you look at last year, they were competent. It was a sad year. They were actually Big 12 favorites. It was all clumped up together, but they actually had a plurality. They were projected to win the Big 12. I'm just looking at their schedule real quick. Utah non-conference game, that's a loss. At TCU, tough game.
Is that a loss? We don't know if Cam Rising's going to play because of his torn ACL.
I don't know, man.
And it's in Waco.
Yeah, I don't know. But in the Baylor, would you be surprised when they won the Big 12 2 years ago? They were supposed to be a 7-5 team.
No, I think that there's like 10 teams in the Big 12 that you would be like, would you be surprised if they played for a complete title game? I'd be like, no.
If Texas,
which is why I think the Big 12 is so much fun.
This is what's going to happen to Texas. They might actually win the Big 12 this year, but they could start 2-2 because they got at Alabama, at Baylor. Those are tough games. Couldn't you see them beat Alabama? If they beat Alabama, I will bet my life they lose to Baylor. I will bet my life.
It would just be a very Texas thing to do.
I will bet you $1,000 you can win your money back from Texas A&M.
It would just be a very Texas thing to do and realize that's what we're doing, picking Texas to win the Big 12, is to not do the thing that Texas has done basically for the last 13, 14 years. They lose to stupid teams that they shouldn't lose to. Like they go to Iowa State late in the year. It's probably going to be cold. It's, I believe, the second to last game of the regular season. It's in November. It's one of the 2 times they leave the state of Texas all year. The other being the game at Tuscaloosa against Alabama. Like that's a game that Texas like historically would lose over the last decade plus, and they probably should have lost to Iowa State last year if Xavier Hutchinson reels in that catch in late in the fourth quarter.
It's just such a manageable schedule, dude. Like Houston, at Houston, that'd be like a trap game. They're not going to lose that.
No, they're going to pound Houston.
Is Dana gone?
I don't know. That's gotten a lot of talk since we did our hot seat episode.
I think it's a very good job.
I don't. I think it's overrated as a job. I think people see it and see like the idea of it being a good job, but no one's really had a lot of success there for a long period of time. And anytime you do, you're probably going to jump to a bigger job in the state. So maybe now because they're in the Big 12.
Do you think Texas Tech is a better job,
or a Baylor or a Texas Tech because they're essentially equals? But you're always going to have you would always jump to an A&M or a Texas or Oklahoma's like kind of in that same region if it ever became available as well.
Well, those jobs don't always come open though.
No, they don't. They don't come open very often. Well, the Texas one does, I guess.
I'd take the Houston job over Texas Tech.
I think now I might, considering they're both in the same league.